By the summer of 1501, Ferdinand of Aragon had 6 ships ready and waiting in the harbor of Laredo to take his youngest daughter to England, and Catalina, soon to be known as Catherine, was saying a last sad farewell to her mother in Granada. Isabella could not put into words how deeply she regretted being unable to go with Catalina to the border, as she had with Isabel and Juana. Even a year ago, when Maria had gone to Portugal to marry her sister Isabel's former husband, King Manuel, Isabella had gone with her as far as Santa Fe. But now problems had arisen that made it necessary for her to remain with the government in Granada. Catherine, very like her mother, understood without question that a queen's duty to her country came first. She herself was being sent to England to be of service to Spain, and also to her husband's country when she should become its queen. Every night she prayed most earnestly that she might not fail. She hoped that her looks would meet with King Henry's approval. He had insisted that all the Spanish girls who were to come with her as ladies-in-waiting should be beautiful. 60 people from home were to remain as members of his household in England. 5 years ago, when Juana had gone to be married in the Netherlands, a fleet of 120 ships had sailed from the harbor of Laredo. There were only 6 ships waiting for Catherine, but she understood her father's reason for that. He considered the King of England a far less important person than the Emperor Maximilian. On August 25th, 4 days after sailing, the 6 ships struck a storm and were driven back into the harbor for repairs. Before they were ready to start again, an English pilot arrived, sent by the king to look for the Spanish princess and see if Ferdinand was playing some kind of trick on him. Henry VII would be suspicious until he saw with his own eyes that no strange-looking girl was being shoved off on him as the future Queen of England. Just as soon as he heard that the Spanish fleet had reached the English harbor of Plymouth, he set out with his council and several hundred guards for Lambeth, where the formal reception was to be held. Too impatient to wait for that, the king rode on to the house of the Bishop of Bath, where Catherine was spending the night. He was told that according to Spanish custom, a bride could not be seen until the wedding morning. "Nonsense," replied the king. "I'll speak with her now, even though she be gone to bed." Catherine was not in bed, but in an adjoining room adjusting her veil and shawl to meet his majesty. As he entered, she made a deep curtsy. The king kissed her hand and studied the young girl. A suitable bride indeed for his son Arthur. He made a most courteous remark, to which she made an equally courteous reply, and neither understood the other. The king spoke no Spanish, and for the moment all the French that Catherine had learned from Margaret of Austria slipped her mind. An hour or so later they met again at the formal reception, and this time the Prince Arthur was with his father. Like her brother Juan, Arthur was very slight and delicate, which made him look even younger than 15. Conversation was carried on this time through 2 interpreters. An English bishop translated what the king and prince said into Latin, which another bishop translated into Spanish. Catherine could have replied directly in Latin, but she would not be so discourteous as to show that she had more learning than the king and the prince. That evening after supper, minstrels played and sang for entertainment. Then Catherine and one of her ladies danced the dances of Spain, one stately and slow, the other gay and lively, with whirling skirts and castanets. Prince Arthur hung back, but pushed into it by his father, did an English dance with his aunt. Next day the company left for London, where elaborate preparations were under way for the wedding. The king spared no expense. St. Paul's Cathedral was the scene of the wedding. There, ready to greet his brother's bride and to be her escort, was Henry, his round cherub face beaming. A big boy for 10, he was stouter by far than Arthur, and almost as tall. He made a bow, offered his right hand to Catherine, and then conducted her solemnly down the long nave to the altar. After the wedding, the court journeyed to Windsor Castle. There an argument immediately arose as to whether Catherine should go with Arthur when he went to his own court at Ludlow Castle on the border of Wales, or whether they should live apart for a while until Arthur was stronger and did not cough so much. The Spanish ambassadors, remembering the tragic death of Juan after his early marriage, would have favored having Catherine remain at Windsor. But they were not consulted. It was decided that when the prince left, Catherine should go with him. The young couple, starting out before Christmas, spent the holiday in Ludlow Castle, which was a cold and gloomy place. The ceiling and walls of the great hall were black with smoke from the vast open hearths, which did not keep the place warm. For entertainment, wild Welsh bards strummed their harps in the firelight and sang dirge-like ballads of the death of King Arthur. All winter, Catherine, used to the sunny warmth of Granada, bravely endured the cold like a good soldier. But in March, both she and Arthur were stricken with some mysterious disease. On April 2nd, 1502, Arthur was dead, and Catherine was still too desperately ill to even know when his poor young body was taken away. Finally, after many weeks, she had recovered enough to be carried in a litter to Richmond and later on to London. In London, Catherine and her Spanish household were established in a house on the Strand until it should be decided what was to be done with her. For months, arguments between the Spanish and the English, in which she had no part, were bandied back and forth. The Spanish sovereigns were determined that their daughter's next husband should be Arthur's younger brother, Henry, who was now heir to the throne. Members of the English council raised an objection, quoting the Bible, which forbade a man to marry his brother's widow. The Pope could overrule that objection, said the Spaniards, with a dispensation. Suddenly, the death of the Queen left Henry VII a widower, and he proposed to marry Catherine himself. Ferdinand and Isabella would have none of that. Catherine must marry the prince, not his father.